Hello, everybody, and welcome to another segment of the Real Mike Pittman Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pittman, and joining me on the show today is a longtime friend, somebody I've known for a number of years that I have a lot of respect for, and is an expert in the nutrition and health industry. His name is Kris Calmese. He's actually located in the Chicago area, and he's on live with us right now. So look like he's traveling, so I can see him in the vehicle with his seatbelt on. So safety is always first as well. Kris, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Good to talk to you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you might talk up just a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, let me do this.
You hear me better now?
Oh, you're much better. Much better.
Much better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, much better. Okay. Well, Kris, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about yourself and tell us who you are and what you do. I know you have several things going on in the nutrition business as it relates to plant-based eating, and as well as exercising and working out. So tell us a little bit about who Kris Calmese is.
I started off my business about 13 years ago. We started off basically on the notion of that people needed to be, taught better about connecting our minds to our bodies. And over the years, one of the hardest issues is getting people to get their food right. And the idea of what it means to fuel your body appropriately. And so, so the whole fitness field is full of people are still using archaic methods to make people lose weight or quote unquote reach a healthier standpoint in their lives. And I decided to spend some time studying with the right people to try to offer a concept, a structure that people can use to better choose how to build their bodies. And so we have a gym that's been open for 13 years. We've been kind of a little bit of everywhere in the area. I mean, we've been as far as Hammond. We've worked in um, Matson, Illinois. Right now, we're in Bradley, Illinois. We've done work in Kankakee, Moments, Orland Park, and kind of all throughout Chicago. So now we're kind of like in the space where we have our kitchen. Our kitchen's been open a little over a year. We serve food that does not have the preservatives and negatives that your traditional food has, which you buy in stores and restaurants. No hormones, no carcasses, no cholesterol, no parasites, no artificial additives, no artificial dyes, and just real food. And so now we're shipping our food out. We're looking at more relationships with schools, potentially help schools to feed kids in a more nutrient dense way, and trying to educate folks about how valuable it is to develop a body made of clean and real food, and not just the food-like products that the industry has sold us as food, and we use to make illnesses and inflammatory imbalances in our bodies.
Now, you talked about the last thing you said. You talked about inflammatory, and I know the causes of a lot of the diseases that overtake a lot of Americans are the result of inflammation. Uh, Through a plant-based diet, I guess this is one of the ways you can eliminate inflammation. And how does actually inflammation get in our bodies in the first place?
Well, I mean, everybody's body needs inflammation. Like if we have our bodies make inflammatory responses and they're necessary for healthy reasons. But the issue is in the overproduction of inflammatory responses due to the chemical intake that the human body experiences. So the inflammatory responses they're designed to get rid of the occasional issue in the body. Or if you have a muscle tear in the ankle, the inflammation develops right around that so that it can hold it stable enough so it can start the healing process. Um, and when we continually consume foods that cause inflammatory responses, we raise our inflammatory response, and the immune system ends up overworking and causing all kinds of negative things. And it's only a tip of the iceberg as well. I mean, if your food is not, I mean, so foods that are inflammatory are also damaging to the microbiota, the living bacteria inside of our bodies that outnumber our cells. So like there's, somewhere between 50 and to 100 trillion living bacteria inside of our bodies. And our bodies are only made up of 10 to 100 billion cells of actual cell tissue. And so we're outnumbered by this entity inside of our body. And this community also affects the way that we think. It affects our ability to handle stress. It affects our immune system's ability to handle perpetrators. It fights your microbiota fights against viruses and keeps balances with viruses that are necessary inside of your body. It battles against yeast and the buildup of yeast in the system. It battles against bad bacterium and foreign entities that come into the system. And so our diets that are inflammatory decimate that community. That community, in a sense, if you really think about it, if they look up, I say this 1,000 times, if that community looks up, your pores are like the stars in the sky. And they most likely in that community, there may be some who don't even believe that you exist, but that community depends upon you and how you take care of it. You are their God. And so how we consume directly affects that community and directly affects our body's production of hormones and inflammatory responses. So when we're young, we feel like we're invincible, but as we get older, the buildup of these consumed products always cause negative issues in the human body.
Now, talk a little bit about when you talked about inflammation. I read something about cortisol, cortisol, and how it affects the body, and I guess different things that can.
I couldn't hear. I'm sorry.
Okay. Or
I'm having
cortisol.
trouble hearing you, actually.
Okay. Can you hear me okay
1 second.
now?
Something's going on with my. I really got to do something about the sound. I can't really hear. I don't know what. Yeah, I need headphones. Yeah.
Oh, we just lost Kris. Maybe he'll dial back in. He was actually traveling. But one of the questions I asked him was about cortisol. And we were talking about inflammation in the body and those things that cause inflammation and how inflammation actually leads to other illnesses that are located within our bodies. I'm trying to add Kris back onto the stage now. There he is. He made it back in. Can you hear me, Kris? Hello, Kris. Can you hear me?
Hey, there's the sound. Oh wow, the sound works suddenly. All right, sorry about that.
No problem. Looked like you might have went through a zone or something.
Yeah, I hear you fine. Yeah,
Okay.
I could not hear you at all. But we're good now.
Okay.
So you said about cortisol. What were you asking?
Yes, cortisol.
So cortisol is they say it's our stress hormone. But they actually, the level of stress that cortisol is correlated with is actually it wakes you up in the morning. It's the thing that wakes people up, the anticipation of the new day. So your adrenal glands secrete a little bit of cortisol to wake you up in the morning. By accumulating stress throughout the day and making our days full of how our work day doesn't have to do with how our bodies need to be treated. You know what I mean? Like we're supposed to be more along of a circadian rhythm, wake up with the sun, go to bed as the sun goes down. But because of the way that our lives are structured to cater towards the structure of our work lives, our stress levels increase dramatically, which promotes higher levels of cortisol. Our food that we consume, when we consume animals that have been, have been killed in the slaughter, in factory farming, the stress involved in that livelihood, that experience is in the bloodstream of those animals that we consume. And so it's a huge number. it's a huge percentage of our heart health and understanding the subject of cortisol. Um, and every person should try to take the time to learn the subject of the circadian rhythm and how much our sleep patterns have to do with how much cortisol we sustain within our systems.
Now, going back to diets and foods, and you're talking about eating the foods that are live foods. When you're preparing your foods, we should basically eat foods as raw as possible, or don't heat them up as possible. Does the heat affect the nutrients in the food, and we overcook them? Or...
Some foods, I mean, like potatoes, you can't eat potatoes raw. Beans, you cannot eat beans raw. You could sprout them and eat them that way. That's another way to eat beans. But if you really want to eat beans and get the nutrition, you kind of have to cook them. Because of the phytic acid that is in beans, it's an anti-nutrient. It makes the body incapable of absorbing nutrients, and it requires that soaking in water and then boiling for a certain amount of time. Some foods can be eaten raw or cooked, both, like ginger. Ginger is equally as beneficial, and in multiple ways, whether it's boiled or if it's raw. Sweet potatoes, they can be done boiled, baked, or raw. But the starch in them, you need them to be cooked so the starch can be broken down. So there's like certain foods absolutely need to be cooked, and certain ones shouldn't be, like apples and bananas and pears and peaches. Really soft greens like romaine lettuce, they should never be cooked. But then you have like turmeric roots. So when you think about it, roots can be cooked. Most every root can be cooked, and extractives can be made from a cooked root. Leaves most of the time shouldn't be, unless they're really, really thick, dense leaves, like turnip greens and collard greens. They have a chemical property that makes them need to be cooked. So there's a spectrum. All food should not be raw. All produce should not be raw. No, that's not.
We'll talk about the organic versus non-organic, and there's a lot of emphasis placed on eating organic foods, those that haven't been sprayed or with any particular type of chemicals, or those things that have not been genetically modified. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of maybe the importance of organic foods, or
that's a spectrum within itself. So like a spectrum of subjects within itself. One, the word organic is kind of loosely used now, considering there are so many farms located directly next to other farms that are not organic, that get sprayed, and the spray ends up over on the organic farming. So it still isn't organic. So like, if you're trying to do something at a better standard, organic is a decent way to make that decision, because the pesticides are bad, but it's kind of hard to prove that you're not getting pesticides, considering the percentage of all farmland that is GMO and is pesticide. So it's not I don't want to say like there's no hope, but like it's slim. You got to have a community. My dad, Pops and I, we like talked about it a lot, kind of having our own and growing our own, but it takes such a community and a certain amount of funds to make something like that happen effectively, and then to have people learn what all the things that people need to buy and grow to make an effective full diet that you wouldn't be bored with. It's just a whole process of trying to make sure that you just go to the store and buy organic. probably need to go find an organic farm to find most of your stuff. Find farmers markets, do a lot of shopping that way, create relationships with farms that do that, rather than just saying that organic says it on the label at the grocery store. So if you're going to take the organic route, the best bet is to try to source your farmers. Like you can't just go to the store.
And tell us about your restaurant that you have and all in the meals that you prepare there. I know you have a taco meat that you make, and I know you have some drinks that seem to have a real nutritional value from the conversations you've had in terms of some of the healing aspects of those drinks and where you have them distributed at.
Yeah, we got some. So the food is whole food plant based. We try to produce recipes made from scratch only. So like none of the impossible burgers or the, what do you call it, the Beyond Meats and all of that stuff with the additives and like how in the world could a green bean become raw meat to the look, smell, and taste if you touched it and smelled and tasted it? And then when heat is applied, it becomes cooked meat. So that is a full chemical process. It's a fully like artificial process. And so we're trying to introduce food that actually is healthy for us, that's made out of all natural things, using whole wheat and lentils and black beans, red beans, chickpeas, making real food. So we create these food boxes full of foods. I have like a lentil and rice, a coconut curry lentil and rice compound. I have a not beef fried rice. And it's actually really, really good. I got a few people, young guys actually buy the tubs. They just keep coming in and grab it because it's an easy bite and they enjoy the flavor. And so the biggest part right now is our tonics. We have these highly mineral dense tonics so you know how sea moss got real popular? Everyone's talking about sea moss, how it has 92 minerals, and it's one of the components in our tonics. We now import ours from Tanzania, and it's the most phytochemical rich and polyphenol rich substances of all plant foods. And so what we're working on is trying to get this tonic here. That's only one of the compounds. We have a couple of other compounds in there that have more minerals than sea moss has in our tonics. And so they have 0 carbohydrates. It's only 9 calories per serving, and we've sold over 17,000 units. We're coming close to 18,000 pretty soon. And we're trying to make relationships with schools and communities that want to really like give our kids the best stuff out there, and we want to knock out Gatorade. Like people out here drinking Gatorade, and Gatorade is like drinking candy. We're going to try to introduce something that actually heals and helps balance blood sugar and blood pressure. So I got a couple stories for you, but go ahead. I don't want to keep running my mouth.
No, I want to hear them because I think this is so important, in terms of, people talk about healthcare, but we don't need better healthcare. We just need to take better care of our health. And I believe one of the ways we start with that is through our diets. I had an epiphany, if you will. I had been a vegetarian for over 20, 25 years and thought that I was doing great because I wasn't eating, chicken or fish or turkey. But at the same time, too, I was piling on a bunch of sugar. I was piling on a bunch of quote unquote plant-based processed food. And I was going to the gym every day and I still couldn't lose weight. I mean, I'd be in the gym an hour and a half. I'd run 3 miles. I'd lift weights, call myself eating good, which I was still doing a lot of oil. And, I had the popcorn store, which was another, with all the sugars and the oils that I was doing there. But until I actually really come to the conclusion that I really needed to stop the sugar, any of those things that was causing inflammation, my weight went from 246 down to 193, which when I played professional baseball, I weighed 195 pounds. So I'm actually 2 pounds less than what I weighed when I was a professional athlete umpteen years ago. So I get it now, and I really want to, alert people, especially our people, because we have the worst diets of anybody seems like on this earth in terms of the foods that we eat. And, which I thought was very important to have you on because you are very health conscious. You know about different foods and whatnot. But go ahead. I wanted you to talk about. You said you had some stories. You are kind of breaking up in and out, but I want our listeners to hear the stories.
So one of the biggest things that people don't know about a large percentage of illnesses are actually the result of not having a certain mineral in our diets, from the lack of iron to the lack of magnesium to lack of calcium to lack of phosphorus and manganese. People eat. So you start your day with say you have like pancakes and eggs somewhere, right? And then the next meal of the day you had like a Subway sandwich, right? And just a regular diet, And then at dinner, you went out and had a steak and potatoes. Might have had a little broccoli with that, right? In that compound alone, you're missing so many nutrients and you don't even know it. Like simple things like carotenoids, beta carotene, that are crucial for like the life of the cone cells inside of your eyes that refract light and make you able to see. That have to do with the connection of the eyes to the brain and your memory, and several different components that have to do with absorbing minerals and developing strong bones. And so we eat we practice these diets that are catered towards the pleasure of our senses only. It's almost like saying that I'm not pouring anything into my car's gas tank unless I like how it feels on my hands. So our diets, based upon our pleasure only as the primary point behind consuming, are completely lacking in that which our bodies need in order to function properly. And so what I did was I opened up a kitchen in a town that really is not prepared for that message. And we're just kind of educating folks and helping them understand it. We have like 100 fast food joints out here in this area. And, the next best thing, the vegan is like, an Impossible Burger in town. And like, there are people who have like cancer and diabetes and high blood pressure out here at alarming rates. And we're not aware that we need more natural foods. And so people only count in calories and carbohydrates, but they won't count in chemicals. The amount of chemicals in our food are astronomical, and we're not aware that that is the number one problem in our diets. It's because our bodies can't process the artificial chemicals. It's just not. Whether your body is thin or whether your body is large, the chemical content inside cannot be avoided. And so, which is why you would think, oh, so-and-so looks so healthy. Why did this happen, this health issue? It's really just, you cannot define toxicity in calories and carbohydrates.
Man, that's some knowledge right there. It really is. And I know you've been well studied throughout the years in terms of looking at this, and in terms of the illnesses and things that seem to overtake us. You had mentioned something about your brother, who I know well, that lives out in California, that had an issue, and that I guess
he had an issue too, yeah, and he's good. And like then we have like a local guy right now who's dealing with some health issues right now. I can't really go into their subjects, but I mean it's been we have some really, really profound. One guy, he had a heart surgery. He had a heart surgery scheduled. He needed an actual transplant, and he had to check his blood pressure every hour. And he took one of our tonics and came back and said the tonic worked better than his medication did. This is a guy who's like on the brink, like, I mean, concern of life, you know what I mean? And we have a few stories like that where people's blood pressure just in just minutes or like a day or a couple of days, blood pressure just balanced better than it's been in years. And it's because of the lack of the minerals in the diet. And so ours comes along with like a couple of ginger extracts that we have, and so it settles some digestive issues. So if you have like IBS or Crohn's disease, um, diverticulitis, any sort of digestive issue, you get relief from it. If you are a person who is performing an athletic, or if you want to lose weight and you want to work out and you undereat and feel like dizzy and nauseated because you didn't eat enough, if you drank one, it would go away and you'd be able to continue to work out. If you had a hangover, it'd wipe it out. If you have sleep issues and you drink it in the daytime, it'll help you sleep in the evening because of the magnesium content. I mean, you name it. If you had a cramp, it would get rid of it in the matter of a couple of minutes, because a large percentage of the calcium, potassium, naturally absorbs in the palate in your mouth, and you get rid of the cramp like that. It's pretty tough. Like,
now,
we're trying to get people to know about it.
No, go ahead, Kris.
Go ahead.
Okay, no, I wanted to ask a question.
No, we're just trying to get people to know about it.
Okay. Now, how did you come about knowing how to mix these different herbs or things, if you will, to? So
I had this biologist. He wrote some literature that universities use on the subject of bioavailability and produce. And his name's Dr. Boris Nimzer. He was a client of mine for a brief while, several years ago. And he kind of sat me down and said, I hear what you're trying to do, but you need a little bit of information to help really understand what you're trying to do. So he hands me these 2 books that I have that I kind of like, I go through kind of pretty religiously to get my information accurate. And I found like 6 different things that I could combine to create one safe drink that even kids could drink. But it took some time to put together the right way, because I used to make it really, really like potent, and it was just intolerable. You couldn't even drink it. And so now that I figured out how to make it appropriately, and I've got like seniors telling me they're getting off of medications, and then I got kids focusing better on school after lunch, which is a big issue in schools, is that most of the fights and issues happen after lunch because schools only feed kids toxic foods. So the brain and body is starved of nutrition, and so it carries out a hangry behavior, not because it's lacking calories, but it's because it's lacking nutrition. And so as a result of that, we discussed this with some of the parents who have children with hyperactive issues, who generally are the ones who are the bad kids, because their bodies hype up and tense, and they don't know how to respond to that internal reaction of being without nutrition. And so we've got some pretty positive results in that subject as well. So we like, they say it's bad in business to have a bunch of different areas to focus on, but we have just too many different groups that this thing benefits.
The name of your restaurant or eatery, what's the name of it, and how does one go about getting? Do you ship your drinks? And then also on your drinks too. No, go ahead, Kris.
It's called BENG, BENG, Bridging Earth's Nutritional Gaps. And if you go to our website, BENG Foods.com, are like different, there's a bunch of different categories as you go through. Try to get acquainted with the website, and then you kind of figure out what you want to order. We ship our drinks, our tonics. We have like a 20-pack. We have like we have a few different sizes. But for right now, we're kind of shipping them as we go. I got a few people that are ordering right now from Pittsburgh, and a couple more from New Orleans. The young lady just contacted me today, so yeah, we're doing that now.
Now, in terms of your drinks, what's the shelf life of your drink? Because I mean, I'm sure they're not pasteurized in any way. So, how do you, what type of shelf life, and how soon should you drink them after you get them? How long do they last and keep their potency?
So so the way that I have things, so when we ship this, it's timed on where the person lived. So I have to produce it and the time so that when it gets to them, they still have another day or two before it has to be refrigerated. Do you get what I'm saying? So I have like a freezing, they get frozen and they stay good for in the refrigerator 6 months and in a freezer a year and a half.
You say
So
6 months
when you
in the
get them, just
refrigerator?
refrigerate. Yes, sir.
Wow. Wow. I don't know when you're juicing, and I juice a lot too. I do a lot of juicing, and
It's not
normally, I'll
juicing.
freeze.
It's not juicing at all.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not juicing. No, not
hmm.
at all. So it's a process. Part of it is fermentation, but I make sure that the potency is the appropriate way. So like I have these little 2-ounce shots that you can pour into 6 to 8 ounce water, 6 to 8 ounces of water that dilutes it a bit. And so for those are for the people who don't like things that are really sweet, and people who like things that are really sweet, drink it concentrated. It's stevia leaf. We use stevia leaf locally from this place called Van Drunen Farms, where they grow the leaf and freeze dry it themselves.
Hmm. When you talked about the water, do you use a particular type of water, alkaline water or tap water? Because I know a lot of our water is contaminated too. What type of water do you use?
Yeah, spring water. Yeah, we use spring water. Either spring water or distilled water, one or the other. Um, I don't do man-made water, and it's real hard to like source properly too, but I pretty much just use spring water or distilled water, or we'll boil water
Hmm.
ourselves actually.
Hmm. Now, in terms of scaling what it is that you do, have you thought about getting with any co-packers that can mass produce your product, or and to get it out to more?
Yeah. Okay. We're looking right now. I got a meeting. I'm gonna meet with this group Wednesday, discuss with them, but we're working on it right now. I'm in a state where any direction is that comes, we're going with that. Whichever one just booms the first. We're on TikTok Shop now. We're on Shopify as well. So we're working on a few different things. We're just trying to figure out which one's the best way to go. I've got a few schools that I'm talking to. So Illinois, I don't know if you heard, but Illinois made it so that they ruled that all schools are supposed to offer plant-based options. And so a lot of schools are taking the easy way out by providing these super cheap, like salad bars that the kids don't even eat. It's like just a bunch of French and dressing and Italian dressing, and then like some romaine lettuce and some shredded carrots out of a bag that they dump into a container, and then they call that plant-based. And I'm
Hmm.
trying to find locations that want to offer some real food. I got tacos made out of like red beans, black beans, chickpeas, quinoa, lentils, bell peppers, onions, garlic, cilantro, like real food, like just broken down and made into recipes that taste like taco meat, like our food tastes real. And we have like a gyro meat that we use to make, we have a bunch of different things. And so we want to try to find a few relationships where we can create more jobs and then serve kids real nutrition.
Yeah, and you have what I call the real deal as it relates to the food. I know there's a restaurant, and I'm not casting purchase upon them, called a Slutty Vegan, and they doing over $100 million a year, and they quote unquote they say this is vegan food, but a lot of it's fried, a lot of it's sugar, and it tastes good to the palate, but it still doesn't have, in my opinion, and I think this is documented as well, a lot of the necessary nutrients and health additives, I guess, that we need in order to really to sustain ourselves.
Right. So I don't down on their business because there's veganism is a belief that supports the life of animals. So like it's more about the well-being of animals and not eating and wearing and using animal products because it's useless and unnecessary to do. Whereas plant-based is more about our own personal health and taking care of your own health. So someone who is whole food plant-based wouldn't most of the time necessarily concern about whether or not their shoes are made out of leather, whereas a vegan would. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, so there's a difference. And so like, there are a lot of people who are down for that. And I guess we do need to eat less meat. That's first and foremost. We need to stop this whole process of how meat is being done. People need to start going back to farmers instead of these factory farms and store-bought fake meats with these enormous chicken wings that we think are wings, but when you buy a whole chicken, it's like a fraction of the size of the ones that you're buying in the rows. Like these Herculean size chicken breasts that they buy. You know what I mean? A lot of the stuff in the stores is just nothing but poison. And why in the world are they only feeding us females? You know, like, why does everybody need so much estrogen? More estrogen leads to more colon cancer and more cervical cancer and breast cancer, but they're only females that are sold in stores. And so I feel like people need to get out of the factory farm meats and start getting into the local farm meats if you're going to eat animals.
You know, there's a doctor that I talk with at least once a month in Houston, Texas. He's a cardiologist by the name of Baxter Montgomery. And for the last probably 12 or 13 years, he treats all of his patients with a plant-based diet. He's also probably one of the only doctors in the country that has a full-fledged cafeteria in his office that he prepares the food and can have the foods for you. And he's gotten some remarkable results in terms of, you know, reversing heart disease, diabetes, other illnesses. I know he told me about a story of the lady that came to see him that was 89 years old and had been on insulin for 50 years, was taking 22 different medications a day as well. And he detoxed her. He said within three days, he had her off her insulin. 3 days. And she had been on it for 50 years. And now she takes no medication. She's 94 years old, in perfect health, no issues, whatever at all. So when I hear about those type of stories being done, you know, from a plant base,
that is encouraging. That says a lot.
Yeah,
wow.
I'll send you the video of that as well, and you'll just. And I'm on a call with him every month. I mean, it's like Inner Circle, and we talk about a lot of different things. You know, how he uses infrared therapy, ozone treatments to treat a lot of his patients with. And he's got people coming to him from all over the world that'll fly in. They'll spend a week with him. He'll get them on a program. And I mean, you're talking about, you know, people that have had serious heart disease. One lady, he said she was on life support, and he was able to feed her intravenously greens, you know, green vegetables and things of that nature. And she walked out of the hospital after being on life support. So there's a lot to be said about, you know, what it is that you're doing, and the you know, and the movement that needs to take place throughout this country. But when we dealing with so many big corporations and foods or whatever, you know, the message can get lost so easily. So it takes individuals such as yourself that are doing things such as what you're doing to be able to turn this thing around. And so I commend is what you're doing. You basically, you know, made this a part of your life goal, and it's in a business for you as well. But it's just so many things that we don't know, and talking about the knowledge that we can all gain and have a better quality of life. Tell us a little bit more about, I guess, the fitness aspect of what you do. I know you train all sorts of different athletes, NFL players, in terms of how, you know, to take care of their body, how to strengthen different portions of their body. Tell us about that aspect of what you do, Kris.
So I've been training my whole life, man. So, you know, if you remember when I was on Springfield, I was like jumping over people in dunk contests and stuff, like catching alley-oops and windmilling after the pause in the air. And then, you know what I mean? I had like crazy bounce, but I'd been training and doing martial arts and training with my boy Sean much of my life. and we like really became like exceptional athletes. And so going up to NIU and going to study kines and really falling into martial arts and fighting and getting kind of wild into the young years, I really like I really got a rounded experience. Like I was in the ring here with guys where you had to humble yourself, then in a space full of young idiots who feel like they have the right to prove their masculine clubs. And then I get the student experience. And so like I like fight a lot, train a lot, and learn with different practitioners. And then mom learned about her cancer, and then thought I understood health and fitness until I found out about cancer. And the doctor who carried out the biopsy asked us what it is that she did differently, that we would consider that most people don't do. And we were like, I mean, well, what do you mean by that? And he goes, just what'd she do? Well, I mean, we were like, well, she was a school teacher. She went stepping, and she was a vegetarian. And he was like, so he kind of laid it on us thick about how if she didn't do whatever it is that was exceptional, we would have never gotten to know her. Whatever it is she was doing kept this cancer that should have taken her in the first few years from taking her for 26, 27 years. And so it helped us to like, it helped me to like have a light bulb come on. You know, like I didn't realize how much we didn't know. I knew about muscle milk. I knew about eating a bunch of protein and calorie and carbs and putting on muscle. I was like 235, 7% body fat at that point, just freakishly, just unnecessarily big. And then I found out about what I was doing to my body when I learned about the subject of cancer. And so I went down the wormhole and found out that these big companies actually pay scientists enormous amounts of money to try to create chemicals to make us addicted to the foods we eat, the same way that addicts are addicted to drugs. And we hold ourselves guilty, thinking that I don't have any willpower. Oh, I can't control. It's not that you don't have any willpower. It's because the scientists took the time to make you addicted to it the same way people are to heroin. This is why you would just go, oh, I got a sudden taste for Fruit Loops. It's because that tug, everybody has a different, most people, they have different things that tug them. You know, like some people will be tugged by Fruit Loops. Somebody will be tugged by pastries. Some people have a real hook on alcohol, you know? And so where the chemical company is guilty is they made us have a hook that we didn't choose the way that drug addicts often are assumed to have chosen. And so we're addicts to the food. It's hard to break because it's been designed for us to be addicted to things to make us ill, so that we spend more on medication. Man, I have someone that was close to me who was just in the hospital, and they were dealing with what could be a liver failure, and then what could have been an intestinal damage, and there were all kinds of negative things that were occurring. You know what the doctor told him? I'm going to prescribe you Ozempic. This young man was 155, 160 pounds, and he thought that he should give him Ozempic, prescribe him Ozempic. Why? Why? What was the reason other than to get paid? And this is what we're experiencing now. People who are like misinformed by a certain percentage of physicians who really are just about getting paid. I met a young man, 18 years old. He was on 9 medications. And I didn't want to get involved in his personal space with it, but I couldn't help but ask him, And basically, it was because of one medication that was started for one thing, and the others are all because of the other medication, because of symptoms of the other medications. So you mean to tell me that you have symptoms of all of these medications, and you believe that this is what you're supposed to do, and this is the only answer? So I feel like if we take the time to find out what a well-nourished diet could do for us, we'd understand the importance of the subject. But most people don't know what it is, and when you say something healthy, a lot of people just turn up the nasty face because they feel like it's disgusting simply because you said it's healthy.
I watched the documentary, and it's been out there for a few years now, and I'm sure you are well aware of it, and probably some Americans as well. That Forks Over Knives documentary. We talked about plant-based eating, and individuals. There were several individuals that were part of that documentary that had, oh my goodness, diabetes, cancer, high blood pressure, liver problems. I mean, you name it. Just about every particular type of illness you can imagine, these individuals had it, and all of them cured themselves through a plant-based diet.
All of them. All of them.
Yeah, all of them through a plant-based diet. And this was no medication. And when you talked about the addictive nature of the foods that we eat, I mean, it's basically like being on heroin, like being on crack, to be able to get yourself off of those particular type of foods that, that contribute to these illnesses, that we have. And, to be able to have the intestinal fortitude to do that, or just maybe just the will to want to live and have a quality of life, it's difficult for most people. When you tell people that have been used to eating, pork or ribs or bacon or biscuits or pastries, that was my big thing. I was a big sweet eater. It's at the same time being a vegetarian, but it wasn't nothing for me to get a pack of Oreo cookies and to sit down and eat the whole pack of Oreo cookies and still say that, well, I don't eat no meat. I don't eat no fish, but boy, I just ate a whole pack of Oreo cookies.
Oreos are vegan.
No, exactly. So
they're terrible for you, and they're vegan. They're terrible for you. They're vegan. And and folks, that's like how we all do the whole you're gonna die once someday, and it really isn't about when you're gonna die. It's about like the quality of life. Like, are you on medications? Do you have pain just getting up and sitting down? Do you have issues with like your memory? Do you struggle with energy throughout your day? Do you feel sluggish? Do you end up falling asleep earlier in the evening because your body just can't handle a whole day of just being yourself? Do you struggle? Do you run out of breath just jogging down the block? These are all signs that your body is rapidly deteriorating, and the quality of life is a subject in discussion. Like, people really are not considering the quality. I don't care. I'll just sit here and chill until I croak. That's not all that's going to happen. Your surgeries, your doctor visits, the pills, all that time you spend suffering, and you're going to spend countless years suffering on the way down. And then when it's time, when the doctor says you need to do something differently, you're so far down the wormhole of suffering that it'll be hard to be able to convince you to try something different. Your palate and your mouth won't even handle the taste of foods that aren't accentuated by sugar and salt and oil. Like, there's a process. We have to learn how to, like, first, let's take a day off this week from the stuff. You know what I mean? Like, just one day. What's that going to do to you other than give your body a chance to flush out some of that stuff that you're building up? So take a day off. Take a day off of meat. Take a day off of fried foods, sweets, sugar, processed foods. Just take a day off and watch how you feel the next morning. It's really something. Then you go back down that hill like, my stomach, after you go right back. It's one day off a week can really change things. 2 days consecutively off can change your health situation. 3 days off is how you start the process of healing. But to make it permanent, you have to do it for sure.
Yeah. When you talked about that, you talked about 1 day, 2 day, 3 days. It made me think about intermittent fasting, and what benefits that we can obtain from intermittent fasting. What's your take on that in terms of how it can help to restore the body?
So intermittent fasting is something that was like kind of like a thing that recent folks came up with, that we pulled out of like what was originally sourced in our religion. Fasting was originally designed to help create self-control over food and drink, and to starve our cravings of those things as an opportunity to show God that you're worthy of a blessing, or you're worthy of things changing in your life. That's where fasting originated. And so we made it into a thing like a measured thing to do for our fitness and our health, but it's missing the spiritual part. And I think that if that fasting is not practiced with some sort of a spiritual practice, whether it's meditation or some sort of something, I think that it's missing the vital part of it that makes it worthwhile. Using it as just a diet tool just creates more binge eating. It just makes people like just go harder when they haven't done. I'm just gonna fast again, and there's a cycle, because human minds are just to having that process of bad stuff, and you have to accumulate a lot of calories in a shorter amount of time, so it promotes binge eating. And so I'm real careful with telling people to do any sort of fast for any reason that has to do with weight loss, because personally I believe that is a spiritual thing. That is something someone should use because they have portion control issues and they have truly a deep ties with food. But if you're going to do it and you're trying to do it for your health, you have to make sure you get enough calories during the time period that you eat. Under eating calories makes the body consume and break down its muscle, and only makes the body weaker and less able to handle illnesses. You have to have enough calories in order to beat your heart, in order to move and digest and process foods. In order to build and sustain the muscle that you have, you need calories. You need ample calories. The average size person needs 15 to 1800 calories a day just to be a normal person. And if you get less than that consistently, it can make you crazy, actually. Your body won't create the proper hormones to be able to handle stress. You have trouble processing love and emotional situations. Your sleep gets affected. You destroy all kinds of relationships. You can't like handle any sort of new stimuli that's difficult. Immediate meltdown. I mean, like, depression is a big deal that's associated with undereating, and so people have gotten obsessed with eating less. And so intermittent fasting promotes that as well. And so I try to, it's such a touchy subject, and a lot of people just go, oh, it just works. But you got a lot of people like tearing their hair out and hair falling out on its own because they're not getting enough iron, just not getting enough calories.
When you talked about that, now I've told this story a couple of times on the show. A personal thing that happened within my family. My wife, probably, this is 2024, maybe about 18 or 19 years ago, was diagnosed with sarcoidosis, which was the same disease that basically killed Bernie Mac, took him out.
Yeah.
And I remember her going to get the diagnosis. When she got the diagnosis, she got the biopsy, and they told her there was no cure for it, and that she would have to be on steroids for the rest of her life, and that it just basically was no hope. And I know personally what she did. She started praying, and she went on a 40-day fast. 40-day fast, water only for 40 days. This was almost 20 years ago, and it went back to the doctor. They could find no signs of it. It's gone. But there was a spiritual aspect in that fasting as well. But here we are, almost 20 years later, and no signs of it, totally healed. And the doctors were naturally they don't want to give any credence to it. Oh, it's in remission,
There has
or
to be there
yeah,
has to be a spiritual aspect to it. There has to be
yeah,
because like
yeah.
the stress involved with the whole not eating part makes your adrenal glands go nuts. But when you have the spiritual aspect involved, you can like give that to God. You know what I'm saying? Like you can like you're asking for and that action of being in that space in that relationship with your God creates the ability to sustain that. But if you're just a person just not eating, they'll go absolutely nuts.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just nuts.
Interesting. Hmm.
This is getting worse. This is getting worse and worse. Like there's no like help me, please help me through this, help me through. There's none of that. There's none of that. There's just suffering, and there has to be there. It has to have that. It can't just be just about your diet, you know.
Hmm. I've also had a couple of other individuals on the show. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Scott Whitaker, who's kind of world renowned in terms of the healing processes. Another guy I had on who goes by the name of the Minister of Health, who's done a lot of different things in terms of helping to heal people, and all this being done through diet. So it's something to say about diet and the foods that and even going back over 100 years when our ancestors, even when they were eating different types of meat or whatever, you got to realize too, even then they weren't shut up with steroids. They were farm raised, they were raised in a better sense, even though they were still eating meat, but they didn't have
And they
all the
weren't
additives.
and they weren't eating meat all day. They weren't like eating sausage at breakfast and then a burger at lunch and then a steak at dinner. And it was something that they ate, more like towards once or twice a week kind of. And mostly the younger guys who were competing or like hunting, doing all the hunting, were the ones who ate the most meat. As you get older, your body becomes a little more fragile in response to things like that. And as we get older, so when you're young, it's milk. When you're young, it's meat. When you're young, it's carbohydrates. But as you get older, your body becomes a lot more fragile to those things. And you have to change and become more medicinal with your approach and your consumption. So when you're young, you're more resilient. But the problem is that we're given nothing but chemicals now, which is why I think that this young generation is partly pretty screwed because they grew up with nothing but this stuff. Like we're giving them ramen noodles, we're giving them the box macaroni and cheese, we're giving them the hot dogs, we're giving them the burgers, we're giving them the fast food, we're giving them the sugars and the junk foods, and we're not even thinking about it. And these kids' whole bodies are made out of this stuff because everything you eat makes what you are. And so I think they're kind
Hmm.
of like screwed in that sense. And so we have nobody's drawn attention to how much that can affect the young people in our whole society, like all cultures.
Hmm. Kris, you got so much information on this for somebody. I consider you to be young. You're like a son to me as well. But in terms of your age and the knowledge that you have in this regard, in terms of how it needs to be shared, the alarm needs to be sounded. And how do we sound that alarm as a people and as a nation, and to get individuals' attention? Because naturally, when we do get it, we're at the stages to whereby the illnesses are to the point they've almost taken us out. But I'm a firm believer that almost any of that can be turned around, and I've seen so many examples of it here within the last 7 or 8 months, just by the research and some of the people that I've talked to that have basically turned their entire life around and health around just by diet. Uh, I've heard it
Yeah.
say that we're digging a grave with our teeth, and I think there's a lot of truth to that in terms of what we eat, and and then people talk about moderation, and I think that, in my opinion, there's a certain point where you can say, okay, moderation, and like you talked about, you're not eating meat all day. Okay, well, maybe I'm going to have 2 strips of bacon for breakfast, but I don't eat any meat the rest of the day. That's better than even though you're still eating some, it's a lot better than having it all day, every
Yeah.
day. There's something
There's a
else to
book.
it.
There's a guy wrote a book called Vegan Till 6 or something, Vegan Till 7, Vegan Till 7. I don't know. Well, basically, he eats all vegan food all day, and then at dinner time, he has his meat, and he has like one normal portion, and like that's it, every day. And so he gets like 8 servings of fruits and vegetables and all these whole grains and all this other stuff, and it really sounds like a great way to go. Don't have to fully be vegan, but man, we got to cut this stuff out of what we're doing right now. We got to change this, man. Now, like it's too late. It's long too late.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, you talked about oils. What would you consider to be oils that are good for us? And I know the bad oils. I know some of the answers to it, but I want to hear from your mouth.
I don't really think that oil is a good thing to consume. If you use it to like coat a pan to keep something from sticking, go for it. But I don't think we should be consuming large quantities of oil. Avocado oil would probably be the best option, but outside of that, the extra virgin olive oil. And that's about it, man. I wouldn't play with the subject very much. The body doesn't actually need oil, and when your blood is like 1/13 or 1/12 of the viscosity of oil, your blood is. So that means your heart has to pump that oil in your blood. How much harder does your heart have to pump to get that stuff to move nutrition through your bloodstream? So we have to think about it. Hey, my phone's about to die right now, man.
Okay. All righty. Well, man, we've been going here for about an hour, and Kris, I really appreciate you taking the time. And I want to make this a regular. I want you to be like a regular columnist or whatever you want to call it, because you have so much information that you can share. And I want to just make this something that we do on a regular basis, where we get together and we talk about this and we have topics. And we got several people that are watching now. Somebody named Vonda Warren says, "Teach nephew." I don't know if she's some relation to you or just maybe she's some relation.
My mom's still scared. My aunt. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Let's do it. Let's definitely do it. BENGFoods.com. BENG Foods.com. Look it up. Look through our stuff. Check it out. See what we got, guys. Thank you for your time, brother.
All right, and folks, that's been Kris Calmese. He's out of the Chicago area. You can follow him on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. He's got so much knowledge as it relates to plant-based eating and how we can turn our health around. And he's also a good friend of mine, and I think so highly of him too. So, Kris, I want to make sure that people know that they saw you on this show, because when you get to be big time, I'm gonna say, you know what? I had him on my show about a year ago. Now he's all over the country. So, Kris, thank you, man. I really appreciate you, man.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Okay.
We'll talk to him.